Welcome to A Guide to Every Deck in Modern. Today we're looking at Bant Company. Although there are hypothetically multiple ways of building the deck, such as aggro or stacks variants, Bant Company is usually a value-oriented deck similar to Elementals that's built around Coco as a card advantage piece. Looking at the deck's creatures, most of them replace themselves in some way, either by drawing a card in the case of Icefang Codal on the walls, or Eternal Witness returning a card from the graveyard to your hand, creatures like Solitude and Deputy of Detention being removal, and Soul Hoarder to repeatedly blink any of the previously mentioned creatures for continuous value. Since most of the deck's creatures have ETB triggers, Ephemerate joins the cast as another value piece similar to Soul Herder. Outside of Coco, the two primary engines in the deck are Eternal Witness and Soul Herder. Eternal Witness gets back anything you need, often Coco itself, to keep spinning for new hits, and Soul Herder generates more value every turn by blinking various creatures. And finally, while not strictly necessary, the deck often runs the combo package of Eternal Witness plus Time Warp to take infinite turns. To explain, once you have Eternal Witness and Time Warp, you can blink Witness with Soul Herder or Ephemerate each turn to retrieve and recast Time Warp. If you use Ephemerate, just get Time Warp on the first blink, then retrieve Ephemerate itself on the rebound. It's important to note when building around Collected Company that you have to play a certain amount of viable hits, that is, creatures with mana value 3 or less, in order for it to be consistent enough, since bricking on Coco by hitting only 1 or even 0 creatures will often result in you losing. This has to be balanced against running non-hits in the deck, which includes all your lands and other cards like Ephemerate and the other 3 copies of Coco. Math-wise, the rule of thumb is that you ideally want around 28 to 30 Cocoable creatures, although you can go lower. If you drop under 25, things start to get dicey. It's also important to note that not all Coco hits are desirable, such as hitting Noble Hierarch later in the game. Bant Company excels in grindy matchups since it can outgrind most other decks. It's also decent against aggro since it plays lots of cheap blockers, including the 0/4 walls. It has similar issues as Elementals since it's bad at fighting ramp and combo decks, especially anything stack-based that doesn't rely on creatures. Additionally, since its game plan relies on creatures with ETB triggers, the deck gets bodied by cards like Elesh Norn and Hushbringer, which can single-handedly beat it. Tips and tricks. If you put clones like Glasspool Mimic into play with Coco, they can only enter as copies of creatures already on the field before you cast Coco and not whatever the second creature is. Soul Herder's plus counter ability triggers from creatures being exiled for any reason, not just its own ability. This includes Ephemerate, Solitude, and Deputy of Detention. If you have multiple Soul Herders, you can't blink the same creature more than once per turn since their abilities target, meaning the first time it's blinked it becomes a new object and the other Soul Herder abilities on the stack no longer have a target and fizzle. Even if you don't have Time Warp, you can still use Eternal Witness plus Ephemerate or Soul Herder to get other things back for value, oftentimes Coco. In this deck, it's usually better to cast Coco during your own turn for a number of reasons, notably to make use of Soul Herder's end step trigger. If you run cards like Venser, Shaper Savant, or other ETB creatures that mess with lands, you can sometimes keep your opponent from progressing their mana by blinking them every turn with Soul Herder or Ephemerate. I hope you've enjoyed this look at Bant Company. Thank you to my supporters, and if you enjoy these videos, consider supporting the channel, and take care.